You don't talk about it much anymore. Not because it stopped hurting, but because you're tired of explaining something no one else can fully feel. On the outside, everything looks normal. You laugh when you're supposed to laugh. You reply when people message you. You show up to your responsibilities. You keep moving forward. At least, that's what it looks like. But there's another version of you that no one really sees. The version of you that exists in the quiet moments. The version of you that shows up late at night when there are no distractions left. When your thoughts finally get loud enough that you can't ignore them anymore. And that's when it hits you. Not all at once, but in waves. A memory, a sentence, a moment, something small that suddenly feels heavy again. And before you even realize it, you're back there. Back in the conversations. Back in the feeling of being chosen. Back in the way they looked at you like you mattered. And for a moment, it all feels real again. Until it doesn't. Until reality slowly creeps back in and reminds you they're not here anymore. And that's when the weight returns. That quiet, unspoken weight that you carry with you every day. Because he didn't just hurt you, he confused you. And confusion cuts deeper than pain. Because pain, at least, is clear. Pain tells you, this wasn't right, this wasn't fair, this needs to end. But confusion keeps you stuck. It keeps you replaying things, overanalyzing, questioning everything. You don't just ask, why did this happen? You ask, was it real? Did they ever truly care? Did I imagine all of it? Was I not enough? Was there something I could have done differently? And those questions, they don't leave easily. They stay with you. They follow you into your mornings. They sit with you in silence. They interrupt your peace. Because your mind is trying to solve something that your heart is still attached to. And that's the trap. Because when your heart is still involved, logic doesn't always win. You can know something isn't right and still feel pulled toward it. You can understand they hurt you and still miss them. You can see the truth and still struggle to accept it. And that doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Because when you love, you don't just invest your time. You invest your emotions, your attention, your energy, your trust. You invest parts of yourself that you don't easily give away. So when someone walks away from that, it doesn't just feel like you lost them. It feels like you lost a part of yourself too. And that's what makes it so hard to move on. Not just their absence, but the version of you that existed when they were there. The version of you that felt excited, hopeful, safe, seen. And now, you're left trying to rebuild that feeling without them. And that's where most people get stuck. Because instead of rebuilding, they start chasing. Not always physically, sometimes emotionally, sometimes mentally. You chase the memories. You chase the meaning. You chase closure. You try to understand what went wrong as if understanding it will somehow undo the pain. But here's the truth. You're not stuck because you don't understand. You're stuck because you're still holding on. Holding on to what it was. Holding on to what it could have been. Holding on to the version of them that made you feel something real. And letting go of that feels like losing them all over again. So instead, you stay in between. Not fully holding on, but not fully letting go either. And that in-between space, that's where the real pain lives. Because you're not moving forward, but you're not at peace either. You're just existing with it, carrying it quietly, hoping that one day it will make sense. Hoping that one day you'll get the clarity you didn't get. Hoping that one day they'll come back and explain everything. And maybe a part of you is still waiting. Even if you don't want to admit it, even if you tell yourself you're done, even if you try to move on, there's still a small voice inside you that says, what if? What if they come back? What if they regret it? What if they realize what they lost? And that what if keeps the door open, even when you deserve closure, even when you deserve peace, even when deep down you already know the truth. Because the truth isn't always easy to accept. The truth is, if someone truly valued you, you wouldn't be this confused. If someone truly cared about you, you wouldn't feel this uncertain. If someone truly wanted to stay, you wouldn't be questioning your worth right now. And I know that's hard to hear because it means accepting something you didn't want to be true. It means realizing that the person you were holding on to might not be the person you thought they were. And that realization, it changes everything. Because now it's not just about them, it's about you. It's about what you accept, what you tolerate, what you believe you deserve. And maybe this wasn't just about them hurting you. Maybe this is about you finally seeing what you've been ignoring. The moments you settled, the times you overgave, the ways you convinced yourself that this is enough, even when it didn't feel right. Because sometimes we don't just get hurt by others, we get hurt by the standards we lower for them. And that's not something people like to admit, but it's something that changes everything once you see it. Because now you're not just asking, why did they hurt me? You're asking, why did I stay? And that question is powerful because it shifts the focus from them back to you. And that's where your healing begins, not in their apology, not in their return, not in closure from them, but in awareness within yourself. Because the moment you see clearly, you start to detach naturally, not because you stopped caring, but because you started understanding. Understanding that you deserve consistency, you deserve clarity, you deserve effort, not confusion, not mixed signals, not emotional instability. And once you truly understand that, you stop chasing, you stop overthinking, you stop trying to fix something that was never yours to fix, and instead you start choosing yourself, quietly, without needing to announce it, without needing to prove anything. You just shift. And that shift, it's subtle at first, but it changes everything. You tell yourself you're moving on. You say it in small ways. I'm done. It doesn't matter anymore. I didn't care like I used to. And maybe part of that is true because you're not who you were when it first happened. You've had time. You've had distance. You've had moments where you actually felt okay again. But then, out of nowhere, something shifts. A memory comes back. A song hits differently. A place reminds you of them. Or maybe it's nothing at all. Just a random moment where your mind decides to go back. And suddenly, you feel it again. Not as intense as before, but still there, still present, still unfinished. And that's the part that confuses you. Because you thought time was supposed to fix this. You thought distance would make it easier. You thought that by now, you'd be completely over it. But you're not fully. And that makes you question yourself. Why am I still thinking about this? Why does it still affect me? Why can't I just let go? But what if the problem isn't that you can't let go? What if the real reason you're still stuck is because you're trying to let go of the wrong thing? Because most people think they're trying to let go of a person, but that's not what's actually holding them back. You're not holding on to them. You're holding on to the way they made you feel, the version of them you believed in, the future you imagined with them, the meaning you attached to the connection. And those things don't disappear just because they do. That's why it's so hard. Because you're not just grieving a person, you're grieving an experience, a possibility, a version of life that felt real to you. And letting go of that feels like letting go of a part of yourself. So instead, your mind tries to protect it. It replays the good moments. It highlights what felt real. It focuses on the beginning, because the beginning is easier to hold on to than the ending. The beginning felt safe. The beginning made sense. The beginning gave you something you didn't even realize you needed. Attention, connection, validation, presence. And when that suddenly changes, your mind struggles to process it because it doesn't match the story you were building. You thought, this is going somewhere. This means something. This is different. But reality said something else. And that gap between expectation and reality, that's where the pain lives. Because your heart is still attached to the expectation, while your mind is slowly accepting the reality. And until those two align, you feel stuck.